And finally, could you read for us a passage from Land?
Yes. Trespass. The idea, one of the things that when you buy a piece of land, you'll be familiar with the phrase real estate. Real estate is the land and anything that's on. Real property is something different. Real property means all of the physical accoutrements, but also what's called the bundle of rights. The rights you have to mine the land, to cut the timber, to throw other people who are not supposed to be on land off it, and to protect it from other people. So I was fascinated by fences and borders and that sort of thing. So in Massachusetts, where I live here and where I'm talking to you from, matters tend to be less formal. I've just quoted some no trespassing Texas. They're very, very formal, telling where you can go, where you can't go. It's a commonplace that ancient boundary trees have often grown so much since signs were placed on them by former owners that they've since folded themselves around the old metal plaques that once read no trespassing, but which now have been wizened and their letters conflated to read nog or nosing, which a good lawyer would probably argue renders the boundary invalid and letting any poacher off scot-free. Warning signs themselves do not keep people off another person's land. The American invention that is most traditionally placed to deter intruders from trespassing, and one which has spread worldwide since its invention in the mid-19th century, is barbed wire, or the devil's rope. The idea behind an invention that has at least half a dozen claimants to being its originator is timelessly simple. Quote, 2 wires twisted together with a short transverse wire coiled or bent at its central portion about one of the wire strands of the twist, with its free ends projecting in opposite directions, the other wire strand serving to bind the spur wire firmly to its place and in position with its spur ends perpendicular to the direction of the fence wire, lateral movement as well as vibration being prevented. I mean, what a ghastly, long, complicated that is. A German immigrant named Jakob Heisch, who first fenced fields in western Illinois with bushes of the formidably spiky orange osage plant, Maclura pomifera, had taken out a patent for barbed metallic wire 10 months earlier than Glidden. Glidden is the inventor of barbed wire, resulting in a vicious lawsuit that lasted for 8 years. Glidden eventually won in the US Supreme Court. Barbed Wire magazine, who knew there was such a thing, published in Kansas to this day, writes extensively about fallout from the celebrated case, and it writes fully and sympathetically of the other inventors, including the splendidly named Ichabod Washburn, who turned his invention of a wire drawing process, once he realized he had missed the barbed wire boat, into the manufacture of sewing machine needles. So, the man who, with this elegantly incomprehensible description of barbed wire, which I read to you a few seconds ago, lays the principal credible claim to the first patent for it in 1874. He was the son of English immigrants to the United States, and he was named Joseph Glidden. His early demonstration of the usefulness of his creation had one unanticipated consequence. It helped in no small measure to bring about a signal change in the American diet, almost overnight. The change derives from the simple fact that the first purpose of barbed wire was to keep animals in, not to keep people out. And to display how easy this was, Glidden built himself an enormous ranch on the near grassless plains of the West Texas Panhandle and housed there the near unimaginable number of 20,000 head of cattle. He was able to corral these animals in such numbers and at such relatively low cost by ringing the entire ranch with his newly made wire, some 120 miles of it, at a cost of some $39,000, far less than a conventional wooden fence and far less cumbersome. Having so many cattle pinioned in one place conveniently close to a railway line that led ultimately to the stockyards in Chicago, played into the great beef bonanza that was just then gripping the nation. Beef became all of a sudden both cheap and available, with the result that almost overnight it would replace pork as the preferred national dinner-time dish. Corralling cattle in such numbers became, from the producer's standpoint, economically most advantageous, leading to the invention of that current abomination of the Midwestern agricultural scene, the feedlot. Given the known cardiac health disbenefits of today's massive beef consumption, leaving to the aside the effects of so unnecessarily large a cattle population on climate change, one might fairly say that Mr. Glidden's invention of barbed wire led in time to the currently high American incidence of heart attacks.
Thank you very much for that.